The next morning, Marcus found Commander Veltar standing in the observation deck, watching the human work crews prepare for the day. The alien's skin was a pale green color, which meant he was curious but still worried. "Your people start work very early," Veltar said as Marcus joined him at the window. "Space doesn't sleep, Commander," Marcus replied, "and neither do broken ships." Below them, the ethereal grace hung in the main repair bay. The ship's beautiful bioluminescent hull still pulsed with soft light, but now it was surrounded by human equipment. Scanning arrays pointed at every part of the ship. Work platforms extended out like metal fingers, allowing engineers to reach every surface. "We'll start with a complete diagnostic," Marcus explained. "Most repair shops look at one system at a time. We look at everything at once." Veltar watched as the human scanning equipment came to life. The array looked like it had been built from spare parts taken from a dozen different alien ships. Cables ran in every direction. Lights flashed in patterns that seemed random but somehow worked together. "This equipment appears to be damaged," Veltar said politely. Marcus laughed. "That's what everyone says. But it works better than anything else in the galaxy." The scanners began their work. Energy beams swept across the ethereal grace from every angle. Computers hummed as they processed massive amounts of data. In most alien facilities, this kind of detailed scan would take 3 days. The humans claimed they could do it in 1 hour. Sarah Kim was leading the scanning team. She stood at a control panel that looked like it had been built by someone who had never seen a proper control panel before. Buttons and switches covered every surface. Screens showed data in at least 6 different alien languages. "Starting deep structure scan," Sarah announced. "All teams report ready." The scanning beams changed color and intensity. They penetrated deep into the ship's hull, examining the bioneural networks that controlled every system. The ethereal grace was not just a ship, it was almost alive. Its systems grew and changed like a living creature. "Interesting," Sarah said as data filled her screens. "Commander, your ship is trying to heal problems that don't exist." "Explain," Veltar said. His skin turned orange with confusion. "Your bioneural systems are designed to fix damage automatically," Sarah continued. "But they're working too hard. They keep trying to improve systems that are already perfect. It's like a person who can't stop picking at a small cut until it becomes a big wound." Marcus nodded as he studied the data. "That's why your navigation system is slow. The neural pathways aren't blocked by calcium deposits. They're overgrown. Your ship's brain is thinking too much." This was something Veltar had never heard before. His people's engineers had said the calcium deposits were a natural result of age. They had recommended expensive treatments that would take weeks to complete. "How do you fix overgrown neural pathways?" the commander asked. "Same way you prune a tree that grows too many branches," Sarah said with a smile. Very carefully, the scanning continued. Every few minutes, the humans found another problem that Veltar's own engineers had missed or misunderstood. The port thruster assembly wasn't worn out. It was being strangled by safety systems that activated every time the engine worked hard. The hull's healing system was slow because it was trying to heal the entire ship instead of just the damaged parts. "Your people build perfect ships," Marcus said as they watched the data flow across the screens. "But perfect for what? A museum, a parade? For efficient travel and long service life," Veltar replied, though he was beginning to doubt this answer. "Out here on the frontier, efficient isn't enough," Marcus said. "Ships need to work when they're damaged. They need to keep flying when half their systems are broken. They need to be strong enough to handle problems their designers never imagined." Pete Kowalski joined them at the observation window. He was an older human with cables and wires sticking out of his skull. The cables allowed him to connect directly to ship computer systems. Most aliens found this practice disturbing, but Pete had been doing it for 15 years. "I've been talking to your ship's main computer," Pete said to Veltar. "Nice personality. Very polite. But it's worried about everything." "The ship is worried?" Veltar asked. "All bioneural systems have something like emotions," Pete explained. "It helps them make decisions. But your ship is afraid of making mistakes. Every time it tries to do something, it stops and checks to make sure it's doing it right. Then it checks again and again." Pete tapped the cables in his skull. "I'm going to teach it to be more confident. Show it that making quick decisions is better than making perfect decisions too late." Veltar's skin turned bright red with alarm. "You want to change my ship's personality?" "Just a little adjustment," Pete said calmly. "Think of it as therapy, not surgery." The scanning was nearly complete. In just under 1 hour, The humans had learned more about the ethereal grace than Veltar's own engineers had discovered in months of study. The data showed problems that ranged from simple to complex, but all of them had solutions. Total repair time estimate 4 days, 6 hours, Sarah announced. That includes a complete overhaul of your thruster assembly, neural pathway optimization and hull regeneration system calibration, Marcus added, plus a few improvements we think you'll like. Improvements? Veltar asked. Your ship is beautiful, Marcus said, but it was designed for a peaceful galaxy. We're going to make sure it can handle the real galaxy. Tom, the young engineer from the day before, approached with another datapad. Chief, we've got the modification plans ready. Want to review them? Marcus took the pad and showed it to Veltar. The screen displayed a 3-dimensional image of the ethereal grace with dozens of small changes highlighted in different colors. Redundant power couplings here and here. Marcus pointed to various spots on the ship image. Emergency life support systems that can run for weeks instead of days. Improved radiation shielding around critical systems. And something we call Murphy proofing. Murphy proofing? Veltar asked. An old human saying, if something can go wrong, it will go wrong, Marcus explained. We add backup systems for your backup systems. And then backups for those. The modifications were subtle. They didn't change the ship's beautiful appearance or interfere with its elegant design, but they would make the ethereal grace much more survivable in dangerous situations. These changes will not affect the ship's performance? Veltar asked. They'll improve it, Sarah said. Your ship will be faster, stronger, and more reliable than when it was first grown. Veltar studied the modification plans carefully. His skin shifted through several colors as he processed what he was seeing. The humans wanted to change his perfect ship, but their changes would make it better than perfect. How is this possible? He asked quietly. Marcus smiled and looked out at the busy repair bay. Human engineers were already moving equipment into position around the ethereal grace. They worked with casual confidence, as if improving perfection was something they did every day. Commander, your people design ships for the galaxy they want to live in, Marcus said. We design them for the galaxy we actually live in. Out here, good enough isn't good enough. Everything has to work better than it was meant to work. And if something goes wrong with your modifications? Veltar asked. Then we fix it, Marcus replied simply. That's what we do. Work crews were already beginning to position the first pieces of equipment around the ship. The real work would start soon. Veltar watched the humans prepare with growing fascination. They moved like they had done this 1,000 times before. Maybe they had. Elena Vasquez moved through the captured Cathara ship like a ghost, her modified armor completely silent against the alien metal floors. Behind her, 12 other humans followed in perfect formation, each one carrying weapons that had been Cathara technology just a week ago. The ship's corridors were wrong for human proportions. Too tall, too wide, designed for 12-foot aliens with 6 arms. But Elena's team had trained for this. They had studied captured ship blueprints, practiced in mock-ups built from wreckage, and learned to use the alien architecture against its creators. Contact ahead, whispered Dr. Chenwei through her earpiece. The scientist had volunteered for the mission despite having no military training, but his understanding of Cathara technology made him invaluable. 3 guards moving toward your position. Elena held up her hand and her team froze instantly. They pressed themselves against the curved walls, using equipment harnesses to anchor themselves in place. The Cathara guards walked past without noticing them, confident that no prey animal could possibly be aboard their ship. That confidence was becoming the aliens' greatest weakness. Clear, Elena whispered, and her team resumed movement toward their target, the ship's main computer core. The plan was ambitious even by human standards. While the main Earth forces kept the Cathara fleet busy with frontal attacks, small teams of specially trained humans were infiltrating the alien ships, using captured stealth technology. Their mission was to plant viruses in the ship systems, download strategic information, and if possible, capture key alien personnel alive. It was the kind of complex, coordinated operation that required precise timing and absolute trust between team members. The Cathara would never attempt such a mission because their culture didn't value cooperation the same way humans did. They were apex predators who preferred direct confrontation to subtle infiltration. Elena, another voice spoke in her earpiece. This was Colonel Sarah Martinez coordinating the operation from Earth. Thermal imaging shows heavy Cathera presence in the computer core. Looks like they've figured out what you're trying to do. Understood. Moving to backup plan. Elena changed direction, leading her team toward the ship's engineering section instead. If they couldn't access the main computer, they would target the power systems directly. Dr. Chen had theorized that human-designed viruses could cause cascade failures in Kythera technology, since the aliens had never encountered malicious software before. They reached the engineering deck without being detected, but Elena could see the problem immediately. The power core was protected by an energy barrier that would vaporize anything that tried to pass through it. The Cathera had learned from earlier human infiltration attempts. Ideas, she asked her team. I might have something, Dr. Chen replied, studying the barrier with handheld scanners. The frequency is similar to their shield technology, but inverted. If we can generate a matching inversion, how long? Give me 10 minutes. Elena nodded and deployed her team to guard positions. This was the dangerous part, staying in one place long enough for the aliens to find them. But it was also where human advantages showed most clearly. Her team didn't need constant communication or complex orders. They understood their roles and could adapt to changing situations without supervision. 5 minutes into Dr. Chen's work, Cathera security forces arrived. The battle that followed would have been impossible for any other species to survive. The Cathera warriors were bigger, stronger, and better armed. They had superior armor and weapons that could punch through most materials. But they fought as individuals, each one trying to claim personal glory by taking down the human intruders. Elena's team fought as a unit. When one human drew alien fire, another struck from a different angle. When Cathera warriors tried to surround individual humans, they found themselves caught in crossfires from teammates they hadn't detected. The humans used the alien ship's own structure as cover, bouncing grenades off walls and timing their movements to create confusion. Most importantly, they fought with a combination of calculation and desperation that the Cathera couldn't understand. Elena herself engaged a warrior in close combat, knowing she was completely outmatched. But while the alien focused on her, 2 of her teammates flanked it and struck at the joint weaknesses her previous battles had identified. Got it, Dr. Chen announced as the energy barrier flickered and died. Elena's team immediately moved to the power core, placing charges and viral transmitters at key points. The devices were small, designed to look like random debris, but they would spread corrupted code throughout the ship's systems within hours. Time to go, Elena ordered. The extraction was even more dangerous than the infiltration. Alarms were screaming throughout the ship, and Cathera forces were converging on their position from multiple directions. But Elena's team had planned for this too. They split into 3 groups, each taking a different route toward the escape pods they had prepared. Elena's group was the smallest, just her and Dr. Chen. They moved through maintenance shafts and service corridors, spaces too small for the massive Cathera warriors to follow easily. When they did encounter aliens, Elena used tactics that would have seemed insane to any other species, sacrificing her own safety to protect the scientist, taking desperate risks to buy him time to complete their mission. They reached the escape pod with Cathera warriors just minutes behind them. As the pod launched toward Earth, Elena could see explosions beginning to ripple through the alien ship. The virus was working faster than expected, causing system failures throughout the vessel. Control, this is Infiltration Team 7, she reported. Mission successful. Package delivered. Confirmed 7, we're seeing cascade failures in 3 enemy ships. How many teams made it out? Elena checked her tactical display. All 12 teams extracted successfully. Total casualties, 6 wounded, none killed. There was a pause on the radio. Say again, 7, did you say 0 killed? Confirmed, Control. We got everyone out. The silence that followed spoke volumes. In any previous war in human history, a mission this dangerous would have resulted in massive casualties. But Elena's teams had trained together, trusted each other completely, and planned for every contingency. They had accomplished something that individual heroes could never achieve. As their escape pod entered Earth's atmosphere, Elena could see the results of their mission spreading through space. The 3 infected Cathera ships were losing power, their systems shutting down one by one. Human fighter squadrons were already moving to capture them before the aliens could recover. Elena, Dr. Chen said quietly, studying data from his handheld scanner. You need to see this. What is it? Information I downloaded from their computers. The Kithra have detailed records of every species they've conquered over the past 3,000 years. 47 different civilizations, Elena. Billions of sentient beings. Elena felt a cold anger settle in her chest. How many survivors? Almost none. They didn't just conquer these species. They hunted them to extinction for sport. The Kithara keep trophies from every intelligent species they've destroyed. Then we make sure they don't destroy any more. As their pod touched down on Earth, Elena was already planning the next phase of the war. The humans had learned to fight the Kithara effectively, but defense wasn't enough. The aliens would eventually call for reinforcements, bringing more ships and warriors from their empire. But the humans had captured Kithara technology now. They had ships, weapons, and most importantly, navigation data showing the locations of other alien worlds. Elena was beginning to realize that Earth wasn't going to be the end of this war. It was going to be the beginning. For 3,000 years, the Kithara had been the hunters. Now it was time for them to learn what it felt like to be prey. Dr. Chen, she said as they climbed out of their pod, how long would it take to modify our captured ships for interstellar travel? The scientist smiled grimly. With what we learned today, maybe a month. Good. Because I think it's time we paid a visit to the Kithara homeworlds. They wanted to hunt humans. Elena checked her grandfather's knife, still stained with alien blood. Let's show them what human hunters can do. On the second day, word had spread throughout Titan Station that something special was happening in the main repair bay. Alien crews from other ships came to watch as the humans worked on the ethereal grace. They had never seen anything like what the humans were doing. Commander Beltar stood with a group of other alien ship officers. There was Captain Cranks from the hegemony battle cruiser Iron Resolve. Captain Cranks was a massive creature with thick armor plating and 4 arms. His people were known as warriors, not engineers. Next to him stood Science Officer Tamara from the Kethvar research vessel, Infinite Question. The Kethvar considered themselves the greatest engineers in the galaxy. Tamara had 6 tentacle-like arms and skin that changed patterns when she was thinking hard. The humans claim they can improve Zephyrian bioengineering, Tamara said, her skin showing swirling patterns of disbelief. This is impossible. Zephyrian technology is already perfect. Nothing is perfect in battle, Captain Krennic said in his deep, rumbling voice. If these humans can make ships stronger, I want to see how. Below them, Pete Kowalski was preparing to connect directly to the Ethereal Grace's bio-neural system. He wore a special suit covered with cables and monitoring equipment. More cables emerged from ports in his skull, waiting to be connected to the ship's main computer interface. This is madness, Veltar said, his skin flashing yellow with worry. No one connects directly to a ship's neural system while it's active. The feedback could kill him. Marcus stood next to Pete, checking the connection equipment one last time. Pete's been doing this for 15 years. He's connected to over 300 different ship designs. He knows what he's doing. Pete looked up at the observation window and waved at the watching aliens. Don't worry, folks. This is the fun part. He plugged the cables from his skull into the ship's neural interface. Immediately, his eyes rolled back and electricity began to arc between his implants and the ship's systems. The Ethereal Grace's hull lights pulsed in rhythm with Pete's heartbeat. I can feel the ship's thoughts, Pete said, his voice sounding distant and strange. It's beautiful, like music made of mathematics. The ship's bio-neural system was incredibly complex. It was not just a computer. It was something between a computer and a living brain. It could learn, adapt, and even dream. But it was also confused and worried about everything. The navigation pathways are overgrown, just like we thought, Pete continued. But it's not random growth. The ship is trying to create backup routes for every possible destination. It wants to be ready for anything, so it's preparing for everything. Pete began to work within the ship's neural system. He moved through the pathways like a gardener pruning an overgrown tree. He carefully removed excess connections that were slowing down the ship's thinking process. At the same time, he strengthened the pathways that were most important. This is impossible, Tamara whispered. Her skin patterns were moving so fast they were hard to follow. The bio-neural feedback should be overwhelming his human brain. But Pete continued to work. His human brain, enhanced with electronic implants, was somehow able to handle the alien neural system. He moved through the ship's thoughts with growing confidence. Found the problem with the thruster assembly, Pete announced. The ship is afraid of its own power. Every time the engines start to work hard, safety systems activate to protect the ship. But they're protecting it from normal operation. Sarah Kim was working on the physical systems while Pete handled the neural problems. She had the ship's port thruster completely apart on the work platform. Components that had taken the Zephyrians years to grow were spread across her workbench. "Look at this," Sarah called out to the watching aliens. "This is beautiful work, but it's over-designed. You've got 17 different safety systems all watching the same components." She held up a small device that looked like it had been made from spare parts in someone's garage. "This little circuit can replace 12 of those safety systems. It's not as pretty, but it works faster and uses less power." Captain Cranks leaned forward with interest. "The device appears crude compared to Zephyrian biotechnology." "Crude, maybe," Sarah replied, "but effective. When your ship is under fire, you don't want 17 systems arguing about whether it's safe to run the engines at full power. You want them to just do it." The watching aliens saw Sarah install the human-made device into the Zephyrian engine system. It looked wrong, like putting a metal patch on a work of art. But when she activated the system, the engine's performance readings immediately improved. 30% increase in efficiency, Tom announced from his monitoring station. Response time improved by 50%. Meanwhile, Pete was making progress with the ship's neural system. The ethereal Grace was beginning to respond differently. Its hull lights pulsed with more energy. Its internal systems hummed with new confidence. "I'm teaching the ship to trust itself," Pete explained. "Every bioneural system needs to learn when to think and when to just act. This ship has been thinking too much and acting too little." "You are changing the ship's personality," Veltar said, his skin showing deep concern. "I'm helping it become what it was meant to be," Pete replied. "Your ship wants to fly fast and far. It wants to explore the galaxy, but it's been held back by fear." Hours passed as the humans continued their work. They moved between the ship's systems like they had built them themselves. Every change they made was small, but together they were transforming the ethereal Grace into something new. "Hull regeneration system is next," Marcus announced. "The ship is trying to heal its entire structure constantly. We're going to teach it to focus on actual damage." The humans had designed a new control program for the healing system. Instead of constantly checking every part of the hull, it would only activate when sensors detected real damage. This would make the healing process much faster when it was actually needed. "But what if the sensors miss something?" Veltar asked. "Then we have backup sensors," Marcus replied, "and backup sensors for the backup sensors." By the end of the second day, the ethereal Grace was running systems tests that amazed everyone watching. The ship's engines responded instantly to commands. Its navigation system calculated jump coordinates faster than before. Its hull regeneration system could repair minor damage in minutes instead of hours. "How did you know what to change?" Tamara asked Marcus as the day's work ended. Marcus looked at the Kethvar scientist with a smile. "We didn't know. We figured it out." "Figured it out? Your people design ships by calculating everything perfectly before you start building," Marcus explained. "We design ships by building them, testing them, breaking them, and fixing them better than before. We learn by doing." Captain Cranks nodded slowly. "This is why human ships are so effective in battle. They are built to survive problems, not to avoid them." "That's right," Marcus said. "We assume everything will go wrong eventually, so we make sure our ships can handle it when it does." The aliens left the observation deck with much to think about. The humans had done something that should have been impossible. They had taken a perfect ship and made it better than perfect. Tomorrow would be even more interesting. The third day brought even more observers to the main repair bay. News of what the humans were doing had spread to ships throughout the local star system. Captain after captain came to see if the stories were true. Could these crude humans really improve ships that were already considered perfect? Commander Veltar had spent the night studying the data from his ship's ongoing repairs. The numbers were incredible. Every system was performing better than factory specifications. Some systems were working at levels that should have been impossible. "This cannot be real," he said to Marcus as they watched the morning work crews prepare for the day's tasks. "The numbers don't lie." "Commander," Marcus replied, "your ship is becoming everything it was meant to be." The humans were starting the most dangerous part of the upgrade process. They were going to modify the ship's faster-than-light drive system. This was the heart of any starship, the system that allowed it to travel between stars in days instead of centuries. The ethereal grace used a bio-wormhole generator. It was a living system that could create tunnels through space-time by growing temporary connections between distant points. It was beautiful, elegant, and completely alien to human thinking. "We've never worked on a bio-wormhole system before," Sarah admitted, as she studied the drive components. "But the basic principles are the same as any other FTL drive." Science Officer Tamara had returned to watch this part of the process. Her skin patterns showed extreme agitation. "You cannot modify a bio-wormhole generator with mechanical tools. It is a living system. It grows according to genetic programming that took our scientists centuries to perfect." "Maybe," Sarah said, "but it's still just moving energy from one place to another. We can work with that." The humans had brought in their most advanced equipment for this job. They had scanners that could see inside the bio-wormhole generator without damaging it. They had tools that could work with living tissue as easily as with metal and circuits. Pete was going to connect to the drive system's neural controls. This was even more dangerous than working with the ship's main computer. The bio-wormhole generator had its own mind, a specialized intelligence that existed only to create tunnels through space. "If something goes wrong, disconnect me immediately," Pete told his team as he prepared the neural links. "What kind of wrong?" Tom asked nervously. "If I start talking about colors that don't exist or trying to go to places that aren't real," Pete replied. "Bio-wormhole minds think in dimensions that human brains aren't built to handle." Pete connected to the drive system's neural interface. This time the reaction was immediate and dramatic. His entire body went rigid as alien thoughts flooded his enhanced brain. The ethereal grace shuddered as its FTL drive activated without being told to. "Pete," Sarah shouted. "Talk to us!" "I'm okay," Pete said, though his voice sounded strange. "But this is wow. This system doesn't just create wormholes. It thinks about them. It dreams about all the places it could go." The bio-wormhole generator was unlike anything Pete had ever connected to. Most ship computers were logical and predictable. This system was creative and intuitive. It didn't just calculate the best route to a destination. It imagined dozens of possible routes and chose the most beautiful one. "That's why your FTL jumps take so long," Pete realized. "The system is an artist. It wants every wormhole to be perfect." "Perfect wormholes are stable wormholes," Veltar protested. "Stability is more important than speed." "Not always," Pete replied. "Sometimes you need to get somewhere fast even if the ride isn't smooth." Pete began working within the bio-wormhole system's mind. He didn't change its basic nature. That would have been impossible and dangerous. Instead, he taught it about human concepts like urgency and efficiency. "I'm showing it memories of human space travel," Pete explained. "Times when getting somewhere fast was more important than getting there comfortably." The humans had brought combat veterans to share their memories with Pete, soldiers who had seen battles where the difference between life and death was measured in seconds. Pilots who had made emergency jumps through unstable wormholes to escape destruction. "The drive system is learning," Pete announced. "It's starting to understand that sometimes perfect is the enemy of good enough." While Pete worked on the mental aspects of the FTL drive, Sarah tackled the physical components. The bio-wormhole generator was grown, not built, but it still needed energy and control systems to function. "Your power coupling is beautiful," Sarah said as she examined the organic energy conduits, "but it's designed to provide steady, consistent power. What happens when you need a lot of power very quickly?" She showed Veltar the power flow diagrams. The bio-wormhole generator received energy through living conduits that grew stronger or weaker, based on need. It was an elegant system, but it was slow to respond to sudden changes. "We're going to add some human-style power management," Sarah explained. "Capacitors that can store energy and release it instantly when needed. Emergency power taps that can draw from the ship's engines directly." The modifications looked crude compared to the elegant bioengineering of the original system, but they would allow the FTL drive to create wormholes much faster when necessary. "You are making our technology less beautiful," Tamara observed sadly. "We're making it more useful," Sarah replied. "Beautiful doesn't matter if you're dead." Hours passed as the humans continued their work. Pete reported progress from inside the bio-wormhole system's mind. The drive was learning to create different types of wormholes for different situations. Stable, beautiful wormholes for normal travel. Fast, rough wormholes for emergencies. Sarah finished installing the power management upgrades. The new systems were hidden inside the existing biostructure, invisible unless you knew where to look. The ethereal Grace would still look like a pure Zephyrian ship, but it would perform like something more. "Ready for testing," Sarah announced. The first test was a simple wormhole calculation. Before the modifications, this process took the bio-wormhole generator several minutes. It had to consider every possible route, evaluate each one for beauty and stability, and then choose the best option. Now the calculation took 30 seconds. Impossible, Veltar whispered as he watched the numbers on the display screens. "The system is learning to trust its instincts," Pete explained as he began disconnecting from the neural interface. "It still considers all the options, but it doesn't need to analyze each one in perfect detail." The second test was more ambitious. The humans asked the bio-wormhole generator to create an emergency class wormhole, the kind used when a ship was under attack and needed to escape immediately. Before the modifications, the ethereal Grace couldn't create emergency wormholes at all. The biosystem was too careful, too concerned with perfection. Now it generated the emergency wormhole in just over 1 minute. "Your ship can now create 3 different classes of wormhole," Marcus explained to the amazed Commander Veltar. "Standard class for normal travel, still as beautiful and stable as before. Fast class for when you need to get somewhere quickly, and emergency class for when you need to leave immediately." The watching alien officers were speechless. The humans had taken one of the most advanced technologies in the galaxy and made it better. Not by replacing it, but by teaching it new possibilities. "How do you know this will work reliably?" Captain Cranks asked. "We don't," Marcus admitted. "But we've built in safeguards. If anything goes wrong, the system falls back to its original programming. Your ship will never be less capable than it was before." As the day ended, the ethereal Grace sat in the repair bay, humming with new energy. Its systems were operating at levels that exceeded every specification. The ship itself seemed more alive, more confident. Tomorrow would be the final day of modifications, and then they would see what the humans had really accomplished. The fourth day arrived with excitement building throughout Titan Station. Ships from across the sector had delayed their own departures just to see the results of the human modifications. The observation deck was crowded with alien officers, engineers, and scientists who had come to witness what many still believed was impossible. Commander Veltar stood at the front of the crowd, his skin cycling through colors that showed nervousness, excitement, and disbelief. In a few hours, he would take his ship out for its final test flight. Either the humans had performed a miracle, or they had destroyed the most beautiful ship in his fleet. "Final systems check complete," Sarah announced from the main work floor. "All modifications are functioning within normal parameters." The humans had worked through the night to complete the last upgrades. They had added emergency life support systems that could keep the crew alive for weeks instead of days. They had installed backup power systems that could run critical functions even if the main engines failed. Most importantly, they had connected everything together with what they called the Murphy Protocol. "Explain this Murphy Protocol one more time," Veltar requested as Marcus joined him at the observation window. "Murphy's Law says that anything that can go wrong will go wrong," Marcus explained. "So we plan for it. Every critical system has backups. Every backup has its own backup. And every backup's backup has at least 2 more backups." "This seems excessive," Science Officer Tamara observed. Her skin patterns showed confusion mixed with admiration. "Out here on the frontier, excessive is just enough," Marcus replied. "Your ship was designed for civilized space, where help is always available and supply stations are everywhere. We've modified it for the real galaxy, where you might be alone for months. The final test would be a complete shakedown cruise. The ethereal Grace would leave Titan Station, jump to a nearby star system, perform various maneuvers to test all its systems, and then return. If everything worked properly, the entire trip would take about 6 hours. And if something goes wrong?" Veltar asked. "Then we fix it," Marcus said simply. "That's what we do." The ethereal Grace was released from the repair bay's docking clamps. It floated free in space, its bioluminescent hull pulsing with new patterns of light. The ship looked the same as when it had arrived. But every alien in the observation deck could sense that something fundamental had changed. "All systems show green," came the voice of the ship's pilot over the communication system. "Request permission to begin test sequence." "Permission granted," Veltar replied. "Take us out slowly." The ship's engines came to life with a smooth hum that was somehow different from before. More confident, more powerful. The ethereal grace moved away from Titan Station with grace that seemed enhanced, rather than diminished by the human modifications. Sublight engines operating at 134% of original specifications, the pilot reported. All systems responding perfectly. Captain Cranks leaned forward with interest. 134%? How is this possible? The engines were being held back by safety systems that activated every time they approached their design limits, Sarah explained. We taught the ship that its design limits were suggestions, not absolute rules. The first real test came when the ship reached the edge of the star system. This was where they would test the modified bio-wormhole generator. Everyone held their breath as the pilot activated the FTL drive. Wormhole generation beginning, the pilot announced, targeting the Kepler 442 system, standard class transit. Before the modifications, creating a standard wormhole took the ethereal grace almost 4 minutes. The biosystem would carefully consider every aspect of the space-time tunnel it was about to create, ensuring perfect stability and minimum energy usage. Wormhole stable and ready for transit, the pilot reported. Generation time, 2 minutes 17 seconds, the watching aliens murmured in amazement. The humans had cut the wormhole generation time in half without compromising stability or safety. The bio-wormhole generator had learned to trust its instincts. Beginning transit, the pilot said. The ethereal grace slipped into the wormhole and disappeared from normal space. Long-range sensors tracked its progress through the space-time tunnel. Everything looked perfect. Transit complete, came the pilot's voice from 37 light-years away. Arrived in Kepler 442 system precisely on target. All systems functioning normally. The next test was more challenging. The pilot activated the ship's new fast-class wormhole capability, targeting a return jump to Titan Station. Fast-class wormhole generation beginning, the pilot reported. This is definitely different from standard class. The biosystem is excited about this. Pete had taught the bio-wormhole generator to experience something like emotions about its work. Creating a fast-class wormhole was like the difference between painting a careful portrait and creating a bold, abstract masterpiece. Both were art, but they required different mindsets. Fast-class wormhole ready, the pilot announced. Generation time, 53 seconds. The return transit was rougher than the outbound journey, but it was also much faster. The ethereal grace emerged from the wormhole with all systems still functioning perfectly. Outstanding, Marcus said with satisfaction. Now for the real test. The emergency class wormhole test would simulate a combat situation. The ship would have to create a wormhole and escape while under simulated attack. This was something the original ethereal grace simply could not do. Beginning emergency scenario, the pilot announced. Activating threat simulation. The ship's computers began generating fake sensor readings that indicated incoming weapons fire. Every alarm on the ship activated. The bioneural systems went into full panic mode, demanding immediate escape. Emergency wormhole generation beginning, the pilot said, his voice tight with concentration even though the danger wasn't real. This was the moment of truth. Either the bio-wormhole generator had learned to work under pressure, or the modifications had failed. Emergency wormholes were crude, unstable, and dangerous, everything that Zephyrian engineering tried to avoid. Emergency wormhole ready, the pilot reported. Generation time, 1 minute, 8 seconds. This feels very different from anything we've done before. The emergency transit was rough and violent. The ship shook as it passed through the unstable space-time tunnel. But it worked. The ethereal grace could now escape from danger faster than almost any other ship in the galaxy. All tests complete, the pilot announced as the ship approached Titan Station. All systems functioning at or above specifications. Request permission to dock. Permission granted, Veltar said, his skin now showing pure gold, the Zephyrian color of joy and amazement. As the ethereal grace settled back into its docking bay, the crowd of alien observers erupted in discussions. What they had witnessed challenged everything they thought they knew about ship design and engineering. How did you know what modifications to make? Temura asked Marcus as the excitement began to die down. We didn't know, Marcus replied honestly. We learned by trying things. Most alien species design ships by calculating everything perfectly before they start. We design them by building, testing, breaking, and rebuilding. But what if your modifications had failed? Captain Cranks asked. Then we would have learned something, Marcus said with a shrug. Failure teaches you more than success ever can. Commander Veltar approached Marcus with his skin showing deep blue, the color of respect and gratitude. "Chief Engineer Chen," he said formally, "I came here expecting simple repairs from primitive engineers. Instead, I found artists who work with metal and energy as my people work with living matter." He paused, looking at his ship with new eyes. "You have not just repaired my vessel. You have made it into something my people never imagined it could become." "Your ship was already incredible, Commander," Marcus replied. "We just helped it reach its full potential." "How do you do it?" Veltar asked. "How do you take the galaxy's most advanced technologies and make them better?" Marcus looked around the busy maintenance facility. Human engineers were already working on the next group of ships. Each one would leave better than it arrived, improved beyond its creator's original vision. "Commander, when you spend your whole history making things work with whatever you can find, you get good at making everything work better than it was supposed to," Marcus said. "Your people build for the perfect galaxy. We build for the galaxy we actually live in." The ethereal Grace departed Titan Station the next morning, half a day ahead of schedule. As it jumped to hyperspace, its performance readings continued to exceed all expectations. The ship didn't just run better, it had become something new. Other alien ships were already requesting appointments at the facility. Word was spreading across the galaxy about the humans who could improve perfection itself. Soon, ships would come from hundreds of star systems to experience the impossible. In the maintenance bay, Sarah was already studying data from their next customer, a hegemony battlecruiser whose owners claimed it was the ultimate fighting machine. She smiled as she looked at the specifications. Everything could be improved. The humans would prove it once again, because that's what humans did. They took the impossible and made it work anyway. They took perfection and made it better. And out here on the frontier, better was the only thing that mattered.